In the time we have together on this occasion, I really want to talk about something that the Apostle Paul wrote to Christians in the city of Corinth. You find it in 1 Corinthians chapter 4. I want you to think not just about the first 5 verses and what they contain, but I want you to think about the applications of those as well. He begins, I'm reading out the New International Version, men ought to regard us as servants of Christ. He goes on to say that they've been entrusted and need to be regarded as individuals that are entrusted with the secret things of God, the message of God. But he's not calling attention to himself in any inordinate way, because in verse number 2 he says, it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. At the very inception of this chapter, he says that we need to view ourselves as servants really of a greater cause than us. And the statement or the priority or the characteristics of one given that trust is that they are honest, that they're trustworthy, that they are faithful. Faithful is the way that he words it here. If you are an employer, you want your employees to be honest, trustworthy, faithful to the responsibilities that they have been given. If you are an employee, you want your employer to be honest, trustworthy, faithful in what he has stated he will do for you as one that works for him. Those really are principles that should go without any kind of question, any kind of doubt. That's one of those axiomatic statements. It's true no matter what. Those that have been given some kind of responsibility need to be faithful in the way they discharge that duty, that responsibility. And then in verse number 3, Paul says something that sounds like on the surface it contradicts everything he's previously stated. Here's the verse. I care very little if I'm judged by you or by any human court. Indeed, I do not even judge myself. So is it kind of anarchy kind of existence, that truth doesn't matter? That's really not what he's saying. So Paul, what are you pointing out? That whether I'm dealing with being judged by you, being judged by public opinion, or by any human court, the court of my peers, or I do not even judge myself, either if I'm judging myself, none of those are really unbiased. If you're judging yourself, chances are you'll be very inclined to give yourself the benefit of the doubt. If those around are judging you, then there's that public opinion, which is not necessarily any kind of rule of thumb or of what is true and what is false. Same thing goes with being judged by a court of your peers. Unless prejudice, unless assumptions, unless biases are actually removed. What's really involved in, if you have a discussion between two people and there's a disagreement, one person says this, the other person says that, the answer, the truth, the validity, actually what is really accurate usually falls somewhere in between those two extremes. Why? Because somebody said, well, this is the way that I feel about it. Let me tell you what I know. What if what you know is limited? Then the judgment that you make based upon what you know is something that's flawed at the outset. He goes on to say, my conscience is clear, verse number 4, but that does not make me innocent. Oh, I'm certain of what I'm talking about. That certainty does not mean that you are infallible. Do you actually have all of the facts? You see, if it's the case that you have these two individuals that are arguing about any particular topic, but either one of them refuses to examine everything, look at all of the facts involved in that topic or that discussion, then that person, either one of them that does that, doesn't really want to know the truth. If both of them do not want to go into all of the details or look at all of the facts, both of them are guilty. Paul says, my conscience may be clear. That does not make me innocent. I may just have a clear conscience and be totally ignorant. That's not the standard. What he says, as he continues verse number 4, is it is the Lord who judges me. It is not flawed humanity, but it's those statements of truth, fact. Those things judge me. And people say, well, yeah, you can't judge me. The Lord judges me. He has, right in this book. If I am not living in ways that go along with those precepts that he has shown humanity that humanity needs to follow, Oh, that judgment is there. And the fact that I have a clear conscience, but I'm ignorant of the precepts, does not mean that I am innocent. The statement again, my conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. It is the Lord who judges me. In verse number 5, he says, therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. The God will bring to light, the Lord will bring to light what is hidden in darkness. He will expose the motives of men's hearts. At that time, each will receive his praise from God. The Lord is the judge. Jesus made a statement back in the Gospel of John, in John chapter 7, and verse 24. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. Make sure that you have all of the details, all of the facts. Otherwise, your judgment is based upon assumption. And that's never appropriate. The statement in verse number 5, God will bring to light what is hidden in darkness. Back in John chapter 3, there's a very familiar conversation Jesus has with one of the religious leaders of his day, Nicodemus. Nicodemus doesn't want to be seen with Jesus, so he actually approaches Jesus in the darkness of night to have this discussion. And Jesus talks about condemnation in the world and says that the condemnation is this, verse number 19 of John 3. This is the condemnation, that the light has come into the world, and men loved darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. Everyone practicing evil hates the light, does not come to the light, lest his deeds should be exposed. But he who does the truth comes to the light, that his deeds may be clearly seen that they have been done in God. And you almost think when Paul is writing to the Christians here in Corinth that particular thought, that particular idea is something that's very much in play. Because God is mentioned as one who will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and expose the motives of men's hearts. And the statement there in John chapter 3 goes back even to that illustration, the disagreement between two people back and forth, and then the idea that the person that really is focused on truth wants everything laid out in the open. The other individual, in the way that Jesus words it, the other individual hates the light, does not come to the light, lest his deeds should be exposed. I don't want facts. I don't want to see anything evaluated. I don't want to see everything uncovered that needs to be present in this kind of conversation. That's not the person that's interested in truth. We live in a world that we're surrounded by people really on both sides of this issue, and individuals that want to know the facts and people that don't because they're more comfortable being ignorant. And that's the tragedy of humanity around the world. But more and more so as you listen, principles that have been totally abandoned by a great many people in these United States. The applications are obvious. Interesting chapter to read through. Please stay safe. We'll talk again soon.